Oh, now here's the intro you listen to in your car when you're driving home late at night wondering what Chatz is gonna do now. You know we put this stuff on YouTube. We gotta get all the good views, the good news, the rude dudes. It's all a vibe, and maybe we wanna monetize. We gotta break even someday, one day. Okay, we releasing this one on Sunday, okay. And maybe playing the songs by an artist that we both love is dicey, to say the least. Too spicy, can't take the heat. Like hot ones, let's take a seat. And y'all really thought an Arab kid couldn't rap, huh? Well, you're right. I'm doing my best here and it's tight, okay? But anyways, with this beat, royalty free, got no queens or kings or things to give us strikes on copyright. Alright, now I'm done introducing the show. You heard enough of my flow. I gotta get up and go, but please enjoy it, alright? John, I'm sorry in advance that you have to hear this one live on the episode. Hello and welcome to Chatz in a Pickle, the show where we don't talk about pop culture in television or film because there is the WGA and SAG strike, and we're here to just hang out and talk about other things that are not strike work. Hi, I'm Alan Ibrahim, your stalwart pickle master this week, and I'm joined as always by the pickle eater himself, Magellan.
Boy, that sure is good. I'm glad we got some of these, just like everybody wanted us to. Wow, I could eat these all night. Yummy.
Salty.
Yeah.
Comments on the last week's Hot Ones episode included you should have dipped a pickle in hot sauce, and where are the pickles? So
I already was on the verge of collapse. that would have been dangerous. I was gonna spew oat milk all over the place. Sorry for people who are not expecting me to use the word spew in the first 2 minutes of the podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna get demonetized.
I know. Anyway, but that was a fun little premiere to this season we're doing here. By the way, if folks are not familiar, it's called Chatz in a Pickle because our recommendations at the end of every episode, as has been the case since 2018, right?
Yes.
That's when we started Chatsums, are named after the Vlasic Snackum pickle, the small little tiny snackable pickle. So, you know, we're in a pickle because it's a tricky situation, but also we're doing kind of recommendational pickles. Anyway, It doesn't mean we're going to eat pickles.
No,
but maybe
we could.
Maybe one of these episodes we could.
I like
Maybe
pickles, but I'm not here to
I love
like
them.
I'm not keeping pickles stocked in my house 24/7. I'm just not doing. I don't live that kind of life.
I am, but I don't want to walk to the fridge right now. That's my thing.
King. What I do want to do is talk to you about my pickle this week, Magellan.
Okay.
So we set out our rules for each other: no struck work and no more than 2 hours of prep time. So I was looking at music stuff because back on our Patreon, patreon.com/Chatzpod, we have covered entire discographies of 2 artists before. We've done Metric, my favorite band, and Bare Naked Ladies, Magellan's favorite band. And I figured let's do another discography, but one that's a little shorter. And dropped upon us like a freaking miracle from the heavens on August 11th, 2023 was Noname's new album, Sundial. And that album itself is about 30 minutes long. So I said, let's just knock out the whole discography and talk about a rapper that means a lot to both of us, right? And we can talk about our history with her and the changes between the 3 albums that we're talking about tonight. So those include 2016's Telefone, 2018's Room 25, and 2023's Sundial by Noname. Magellan, I gotta come out the gate first because I believe you were the first Noname fan in the Chatz community. Can you tell me about your history with her?
It's got to be the case that I first heard Noname on Acid Rap in 2013, which was Chance the Rapper's second mixtape.
Just turned 10, by the way.
It just turned 10, yeah. I saw an ad on like a digital screen next to Barclays Center that was like, Acid Rap is 10 years old. And I was like, leave me alone. I don't need to be confronted by that in a public place.
I saw the same ad here in Boston. I think it was like they did like some show. I don't know where.
Okay.
They did some performance, but I saw that as well.
But yeah, she featured on the song Lost on Acid Rap, which is a great song, great feature. And then I must have been aware of Telefone, the first project that we're going to talk about tonight, when it came out in 2016. And, you know, I'm not sure of exactly the avenue by which I encountered Telefone, whether it was like on Twitter or Spotify was like, hey, this is out, you should listen to it, or whatever. But that's how I encountered Noname. And listened to Telefone, I think in 2016, and I was a huge fan of that album. It's been like in heavy rotation for me since then for the last 7 years. So I'm a big fan of Noname and her style and her work, and I'm excited to talk about all three of the projects we're talking about tonight. What about you? What's your history with Noname?
Same here. Definitely heard her on Lost initially. I had the pleasure of seeing Noname live in 2019. One of her last, I think that was her last tour, actually. It was the first concert that I went to alone. It was kind of a weird experience because she is a very singular artist, something that we'll talk about. She has a very clear like point of view and political stance that has evolved through her discography. But I remember really liking that show and not feeling bad that I was seeing it like solo and just being like, damn, this is great. I'm vibing. I'm having a good time. That was the Room 25 tour. And then she went on hiatus and I was really bummed. So I kept up with her social media and the Noname Book Club. I've been a patron of the Noname Book Club for a few years now. That is her project aiming to basically donate books to incarcerated people and also engage in a book club with them and with her community, reading books primarily by POC writers and from all different walks of life, focusing on like leftist politics and stuff. So the Noname Book Club has been my way of engaging with Noname's work since Room 25, but I freaking loved that album when it came out, and the minute this dropped I was like, we gotta cover this. I gotta talk about this. I'm so excited. And I have a lot of thoughts about it. But first, let's roll the tape all the way back to the year 2016. And we're gonna talk about Telefone first. Back when Noname was still using the stage name Noname Gypsy, I believe, which, you know, that word is a slur now, we know that, but that was the term she was going by, I guess, transitioning from poetry to music. And I think you definitely get the sense from Noname's work, especially early on, that she came from the world of poetry, right? Like Telefone is a very poetic album with like a lot of great vibes and jazzy influences and consciousness and this sort of like neo soul energy. But it is like lyrically kind of everywhere. You mentioned actually that you would play this song for like your students, or you still do. Is that the case still?
Yeah. First of all, I checked my albums listened to record that I keep, and I did not listen to this in 2016. I was late to the Telefone party, so I can't claim that I was on it. I first listened to it in February of 2017. So
okay. Not too late.
I gotta kind of rewind some of my memory there. This is an album. There are like two albums that I keep calling it's technically a mixtape, I guess, but
yes,
that distinction feels meaningless to me.
And it's blurrier and blurrier every day.
Yeah. So I'm just going to call it an album because that's basically what it is. This is one of two albums that I'll like go to if I need to put something on that like holds a good vibe and like everybody can enjoy it at school, like if I'm playing music in the hallway or in class when we're trying to work on something, or you know, stuff like that. It's either Telefone or it's Boys and Girls by Alabama Shakes. Those are like the two albums that never fail to hit exactly the thing that I'm trying to do. So yeah.
And so what do you like about Telefone, I guess? What makes it a good album for that vibe? And like what does it make it stick out for you early on, besides obviously you're also somebody who enjoys like, I guess, poetry and like poetic lyricism, so I'm sure that was a big part of it too.
Yeah, I think this hits a lot of things that I tend to enjoy in music. I think it's got a sort of mellow quality to it. I think that this album is melancholy but with a kind of hopeful spin or hopeful moments. The lyrics are pretty dense. Something that really struck me, especially the second time that I listened to Telefone for this, was the beats are like mid-tempo or kind of slow, but Noname's rapping is always pretty fast. Like she's always moving at double time of how the beat is moving, and it creates this effect where like she's adding a lot to the kind of sonic space with her voice, and adding a lot of melodic moves or like switching up her cadence and creating all these different moments that are kind of memorable moments in their own right. There's a high density of them, even just musically. And then you listen to the lyrics, and lyrically there's a lot of great images and poetry, really, being spun here. And so it's an album that allows you to engage with it at the level that you need to in that moment. If you just need to kind of exist in the groove and the vibe of it, it does that for you. If you're there to ruminate on it and think about it, there's depth to go into. So I really love it for that reason.
Yeah, my favorite song on this album, I want to ask you yours, but my favorite song, and I think it's the most indicative of what I like about Telefone, is Forever. And that's because it has there's so many creative choices in the beat, like so many different instruments and sounds and plinks and plunks. And like you said, it never goes too fast. Like, I've been trying, and this is like part of why I picked Noname for this episode. I'm trying to get better at like specific music criticism, not just technical stuff, but like how things feel. And one of my big inspirations for learning this stuff has been the YouTube critic Mera, Mera. She does a lot of K-pop critique, and I've been watching her stuff for a long time, and she has really nailed the way you describe music without being technical and just being emotional. And so like big shout outs to her. In like some of my notes, especially about Telefone, are like that. Specifically, like in trying to pinpoint the vibe of Telefone, what I wrote was, this feels like college. This feels like your friend's bedroom. This feels like kissing someone or smoking a blunt with someone. Like, this is that energy. It's just like, things are a little rough. Things are weird, but I'm here, I'm focused, and I'm in the moment. It's a very present album, which I love about it.
Yeah. I think what I sort of landed on what I think this is the nexus of that I love about it, which is, this is kind of like Miseducation of Lauryn Hill meets like alt rap, underground rap sort of vibe. Like, it's a Lauryn Hill meets MF Doom sort of thing almost.
Awesome combo.
And it's interesting, like, Noname is naming that intersection a bit at the beginning of Forever, because at the beginning she says, Miss Nina Simone, Jimmy Jones, Missy Elliott, musically they're my relatives, never forget my Andre. Like, she's like, I'm in this lineage of musicians who make, like Lauryn Hill or Nina Simone, make very declarative, kind of strong voiced music. This is who I am. Here I am. Here's the message of it. And I'm bringing into it the vibe of somebody like Andre 3000, who's like gonna come at it a little sideways or a little faster or in ways that are gonna surprise you. And Lauryn Hill's my favorite rapper, so I'm not saying that she doesn't do those things also, but like Miseducation as an album it's very clear what the themes of it are and what it's trying to get across. And I think what's interesting about Telefone is it like aesthetically moves in ways that Miseducation does, but it's definitely a lot more imagistic. It's a lot more of a puzzle, I think, which is a rewarding thing to engage with as a listener.
Yeah, and you really do get the sense that like she spent a lot of college and her early 20s, I guess, doing poetry and like collaborating with other like Chicago-based artists, their name being from Chicago, born and raised. Worked with like, Chance the Rapper and Smino, who is on this album, and Saba and a lot of other people. Like, coming to her work from poetry before rap music gives her a very unique style that honestly, especially in Telefone, sounds like slam poetry with a beat behind it. You know what I mean? I think that's where her like distinct style comes from, and I love that about it. It's just so, and this is like one of the other fun things about this project is like, this is such an interesting album when you think about the trajectory of her career, because a lot of like nice poets, live in the city, rap about the city, rap about the culture, end up getting more and more politically inclined over time, right? I think it was like between Telefone and Room 25 that Noname posted something on Instagram about how like capitalism isn't necessarily a bad thing. And she got so much flack for that she looped all the way around and became a freaking leftist, which is awesome. And so like you listen to Telefone, you're like, this is somebody who like is obviously thinking about that stuff, but isn't like rapping about it. And there's this like separation between artist and art where like, I don't know what Noname's life is like or what she's into and what she does beyond the work that she puts out. So if she doesn't rap about it, I don't know what she's thinking. I'm not personally friends with her. And I think that's interesting. Like, what you choose to cover in Telefone is, you know, jealous boys and kids stealing 20s from their parents, like little like jokey, silly moments that are like kind of relatable but kind of fantastical, and but all feel very, like I said, warm and familiar, which I think is just such a unique choice and a smart choice for your first album. Like, let me make something that people just enjoy and that is thought provoking, and because this was actually called by a lot of critics at the time like one of the more thought-provoking records of the year, which is so interesting again considering where she goes. Did you mention your favorite song on this one?
I'm caught between two. I think one of them fits what we're discussing right now, so we can talk about it. I love the first track, Yesterday. I absolutely adore that song, and I think what Yesterday represents, that's, you know, in line with what you're describing and so great about Telefone, is the way that she's able to kind of present and hold conflicting ideas and like put both of them in front of you and like allow both of the things to be true. Because Yesterday is this song that's about like, it literally starts, and I know the money don't really make me whole. The magazine covers drenched in gold. The dreams of granny and mansion and happy. The little things I need to save my soul. Like, there's already in those first 4 lines this tension about, well, I know that money isn't everything, but also it can bring about all of these things that I dream about. I know that like rushing into my future is something that I would like to do. Like, I have these ambitions, and also I'm feeling really nostalgic. Her grandmother passed away, which was part of what motivates some of the music in this album. And there's a lot of rumination on like death, and even that title of Yesterday is like, take me back to yesterday, take me back to my childhood, take me back to like, you know, my grandmother's house or her arms or whatever it is that she's describing there. And then she's also later in the song thinking about how she's going to be remembered as an artist, and like what the yesterday of her is going to be, and like trying to reflect on both of those things at the same time. Is really thematically complex, but is something that she handles, I think, really effectively.
It's deft, if anything. And I think, Yesterday is a beautiful, beautiful track. And I know a lot of people who have resonated with it if they've lost grandparents. And even just like, you know, it's July 2016, like America's in a really weird, complicated place. I've been listening to podcasts from 2016 lately, and the amount of like election talk is ridiculous, like even in things that have nothing to do with that. It's cool that this album is not about that stuff, but it is about like, I just don't want to be in the present right now, and things were a lot better for a little bit there, and I miss the love and community that I had. And I think 2 things exemplify that. One is the fact that like the cover art is like it's styled after like a children's drawing of presumably Noname, or a young girl with a skull on its head, like a smiling skull face.
Right.
Which is like, you know, death is on the mind, death is literally on your mind, but also, you know, there's a nice color palette to it. It's a soft pink. It's like, I think that it's one of the best examples of like album art that nails the vibe of the album, you know. And the other thing, and this is like becomes a trend in all 3 of these albums, is that Telefone is full of features, which is really, really cool for somebody's first album. You don't see that very often because people kind of like quote unquote earn features usually. But Noname had been like in the community with poets, with other rappers for so long that like I'd say about half of the songs on this album have features on them. Which is so cool. And it's great seeing names like Smino and like Saba and being like, oh, you're going to go on to like make your own really cool work. Like, we are watching the ground floor of a lot of very, very talented artists. And I think Noname in general has always brought on other people so that her albums are not just her voice. It's like everybody else gets a chance to talk to.
Yeah.
Including some people that will come back later. This is the other fun thing about listening to all 3 of these in a day, was like hearing rappers on Telefone that come back on the 3rd album, and you're like, whoa, you're still around. You're still doing stuff. That's so cool.
Or like Aaron Allen Kane's voice across the 2 albums.
Yeah, exactly.
The 3, like, those 2 albums,
and because it's not just rappers. Also, it's not. She has a lot of like male rappers, but she also has male singers. She has female singers, female rappers. Across the board, really cool features, I'd say. Was there also, this is my last question about Telefone before we can move on, like your favorite feature or favorite like other person's verse on Telefone?
Well, my other favorite song was Reality Check.
Ooh,
And
okay.
I love Aaron Allen Kane as a singer who I'm a big fan of. I may in fact
Yes.
bring that back up at the end of the episode during the Chatsum segment potentially. Just a little preview. But she sings the hook on Reality Check, where she says, "Don't fear the light that dwells deep within. You're powerful beyond what you imagine. Just let your light glow." It's just a beautiful hook, and she sings it really well. And then Akenya is on the outro of that song. And both of them bring these lovely melodic elements to that song, which is this, like, again, you know, in the first verse, Noname is reflecting on like opportunities coming my way, and I was like out for coffee when opportunity came knocking, and it's a pretty funny verse. What did she say? Jesus made an album, I'm still waiting in the line for cream. Like, just like such a great sense of humor there. But then she's also in a later verse talking about, you know, well, there's also this family stuff that was going on that made it difficult to create, and so she's kind of holding both of those things. And then the hook and the outro are these very affirming, like, answer the call, do your thing, be yourself. And I think both of them sing it really beautifully, so I really like Reality Check for those features.
Yeah.
What about you? Did you have one?
I think it has to be Shadow Man for me. I love all of the verses on that last track because it's just a showcase for people's vocal range. It's not like exactly my favorite song lyrically. It's a wash over you track, but No Name's got some great stuff. Preach, Church, Tabernacle, Tallahassee, Sunshine, Southern is my bloodline. We know it'll come time. I'm like, oh my God, Saba, I fucking
To Go.
need to put out another album. To Go.
Yeah.
We'll know it'll come time. To Go.
Yeah, the Smino line, hey, tippy toe on a tightrope, that like lives in my mind rent free.
Dice roll. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just so
the flow, and that's so fun.
I saw a review actually of one of these albums that said that like the thing about rap artists is it becomes a game when you have a career of how long until you start getting personal. People really, really love rap albums that are like hyper personal and specific to the musician. You get people like that for all music, but like with rap, because it's so storytelling-y, that there's a greater sort of weight given to like you're rapping about your life. Like when Earl Sweatshirt wrote about like coming back from, you know, his family situation, it's like, oh my God, that's his best album. When Kendrick did, you know, that was it Mr. Stepper? What's that latest one? Or even all of
Mr.
his albums,
Morale
honestly.
And the Big Steppers. Yeah.
Yeah, but all of his albums are like, how personal can I get? And I guess this is my real last point on this. I didn't think I'd have this many thoughts on Telefone, but like the album manages to be personal and relatable without just like laying out everything about No Name's life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like it leaves a little bit to the imagination that she starts to unravel more about like her points of view starting in literally the next record. So it's really cool that she was able to put this out. Are you ready to move on?
There's a couple other just random notes I just want to skim through.
Sure.
Sunny Duet, the production on that song is amazing. There are these like vocal chops in the background that are so good, and the way that voices are used as part of the instrumentation of this album overall is really beautiful. There's a line that No Name has where she goes, she's like, summertime, delight, delight, like just like little Mississippi over ice, Janet Jackson and flashing lights, the little melody and flow there.
My Vagabonds Lonely Road, a celebrated haiku. Oh,
yeah. It's so good. I love the way that the telephone metaphor comes up and means different things in different songs.
Right.
Because in some songs it's just like the telephone that I call you on, like in Sunny Duet, and it's a sort of young love thing. Sometimes it's like in Reality Check, the call, when that call comes, when opportunity comes for you, like you need to answer it. And then as the album goes on, it takes on the deeper meaning in Casket Pretty when she's talking about racial violence, and she says, I hope to God that my telly don't ring. So now also the telephone is taking on this sort of like ominous thing that we're hoping to not get.
Yeah, that's where I get bad news from when the phone rings.
and Casket Pretty, the production on that with the baby's voice in it, as she's talking about too many babies in suits, and it's fucking, that's powerful stuff. So
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And then she makes multiple references to Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. She likes to use the phrase "everything is everything" as like a mantra that comes up in some of the later albums. So I just thought that was an interesting pattern as well. But those are my notes.
It's a wonderful album. We're not here to do any sort of ratings, but I think we covered all the stuff that we liked about it. Primarily, it's almost a no skip for me. And yeah, I think it's basically no skip because one, it's like really short.
No skip, yeah.
It's just that it's not like these are all my favorite tracks of all time, but like it just flows really well and it builds, and there's no like slower part. It just is consistently really, really good.
I would safely recommend this to anybody.
Anybody. Yeah. Do you like music? Yeah. Do you like the concept of music? You should listen to Telefone. It's an amazing album.
Yeah.
So now the difficulty ramps up a little bit, right? It's 2 years later, and the pressure's on. Noname, what are you going to do? You know, Chance is doing his own thing. You have to be your own artist now, 100%. Here comes Room 25, and Noname's been reading a little bit of theory, and we're starting to get a little bit more political here. Not like exponentially so. It's not like an album about radicalization, but it comes up in almost every song, like problems about like worries about police violence, and worries about racial inequality and cultural differences, and you know, it's a much more mature album, I would say. My first note was that it's just a lot sharper. I also think that she clearly made some deliberate choices to change the flows a little bit. They're not all slow here anymore. I think my favorite example of that, and we can talk more about it, but it's Montego Bay, which is such an incredible song to see live, by the way, just because the way that she like runs through her lines is amazing. And it's like double time, right? Like what happens when Noname does a song at like double speed, and how cool does that sound? The answer is very, very fucking cool. This album hit me at the right place, right time. Definitely. I was like listening to it over and over again. I was memorizing lyrics. I have a lot of these songs still in some of my playlists. I have to tell you, from now, this is my favorite Noname album. Even after listening to all three multiple times, I'm still like, yeah, Room 25 is just so much what I want out of her work. It's like, I'm figuring it out. I got the features. Lyrically, it's very strong, and it's just so memorable. So many like unforgettable lines on this. You're also a Room 25 stan, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I don't think it passes Telefone for me, just because I like adore Telefone and listen to it all the time still. But I think there are tracks on here that are like that blow you out of the water, and I do think you know, one of the best lines to me ever in all of music is still on Self, where she says, "My pussy teaching 9th grade English. My pussy wrote a thesis on colonialism, in conversation with a marginal system, in love with Jesus. And y'all still thought a bee couldn't rap, huh?" Like, God, that's so good. That's just like, I love Self because it has similar production to Telefone, but she's making this statement of like, okay, here's the style that you know me for, but now I'm gonna start doing this sort of a thing, so get ready, because here we go. And then she takes you on a ride. So I really like Room 25 a lot, and I think it's a great project. It's not as like, I don't have as much personal affection for it necessarily, but that isn't a commentary on whether it's better or worse or what.
I think it was personal for me just because, like, obviously weird time in my life, 2018. We talk a lot about that like era, my like post-college slump, but also like I was as just like Noname developing like a serious political consciousness around 2018. So I too love that line that you just quoted, but just like I can close my eyes and listen to Room 25 and like see a bunch of people in a room like throwing down over these lyrics, like getting like, oh here we go, and like these beats are so fast and so cool. Even like you jump right into blaxploitation and you hear that like a bum 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 bum, and you're like, whoa, this is Noname. Like, what are you doing? This is such a different flow, but your voice is the same, and it's so sharp, and it hits so much better for me. I love albums that like try different weird things. I've talked about that. Like, we talked about that on the like on the Metric Patreon show about like when they switched from rock to more pop stuff. They did it well because they very firmly said like we're doing a different thing. We're doing a fusion, but we're putting our own spin on it. I don't think this is a different genre than Telefone, really, but it is just such a cool record.
Yeah.
Favorite track? What do you got?
Let's see. I don't know. I gotta figure that out.
I can offer mine. Get the juices flowing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I would say my favorite song on this album, the one that's in my playlist that I listen to the most, is actually Ace.
Okay.
I mean, like, Ace gets stuck in my head randomly just because it's got one of the coolest flows, and that hum, like. Speaking of last week, when Kid Cudi was on Hot Ones, Sean asked him, like, you know, people say that their lives were changed by the sound of you humming with your mouth. Like, that, how do you do that? What's your secret? And the humming at the beginning of Ace that kind of goes throughout it is, like, life-changing. And it's my favorite features. It's Noname, Smino, and Saba. It's only the people I like. It's on an all-killer, no-filler song. It's
funny. Beautiful
live because everyone goes, fuck is you saying? At the same time, and it's just...
Oh, that's that song. Got it.
Yeah. She made it clap, 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 clippity, clap, clap out in Clapton. Is still one of those lines that, like, it doesn't have to mean anything, but it's fun to say. I don't even know what the song is about really lyrically, to be honest with you. But it just makes me grin, and it's memorable, and yeah, this is the stuff that I come to Noname for. It's like, holy shit, that is an incredible production that you made there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Ace is my number one with a gun.
Yeah. I think mine is probably Window.
Yeah.
And
right? Jumping out the window.
Looking at the window. Yeah.
It's like eerie in a cool way.
Yeah, so if Genius is to be believed, this song is an account of Noname losing her virginity at the age of 25, according to Genius.com. And you know, I think it's an example of what we were talking about as a strength of Telefone, is that it's personal without being specific. And I think Room 25 gets into more personal storytelling, and this is a great example of how Noname does that in a way that preserves the kind of like poetic quality of Telefone, but like tells a very specific anecdotal story. We can tell that it's about a specific relationship. And she's also injecting that kind of edge that this album has. I don't know why, but I love the lines. This song ain't even about you, Daffy Duck. This song is gonna make me fuck your daddy. Like, the like fuck you energy of that pair of lines is powerful. Yeah.
The multi-layered references, that's another one of her biggest lyrical strengths, is making references that don't feel flashy or like she's being braggadocious. It's just like, yeah, this song ain't even about you. There's reference 1, Daffy Duck reference 2, Laffy Taffy reference 3. Like, just like knocking them out. And like, it's almost like this album is like intentionally difficult to annotate on Genius, because there's so many like, and that part's not even annotated on the Genius page from what I'm seeing. So like, someone was just like, whatever, you guys know what these things are. It's not that big of a deal. And it sounds good. Like, this is, again, that poetry skill where sound and flow matters just as much as lyrics. But like you said earlier, she's talking about colonialism. She's talking about the state. She's talking about the police. Talking about her grandmother telling her the last thing she remembers being told is like, don't trust the police, you know, don't like talk back to them. Things that girls like Noname are being, people like Noname are being told every day, and it's like really sad and really fucked up, and we're thinking about it more. And like very ahead of her time too. I think it's on Self. I forget which song of this album she briefly talks about. She mentions like, be careful of meeting your heroes. Be careful who you trust, including people like Kanye West. Like, she name drops Kanye West in there. And I was like,
yeah, because
wow.
On Telefone, she has a positive I think she's like, I stand in front of a college dropout is one of the songs. Like, I think she still kind of has this image of him in Telefone of like, this is a Chicago music icon, role model guy. And then in Room 25, it's like, nah.
Really questioning every god, religion, Kanye, B words. Like, you know? And that was only because like I Am a God had come out. And that's like she knew. And that's sad. Like people from Chicago idolize Kanye. People across the world idolized Kanye West. And this album is very much confronting, like, oh shit, you can't. Those things that I talked about in Telefone, the like positive things, like there is a lot of them are tarnished. You know, a lot of the things that she associates with her childhood and with her growing up and coming up in Chicago are tainted. And like now she's become an adult who understands that, but still finds love and community. Community has always, like I said, been such a big part of Noname's work with the features and with the talk about friends and family. And I love that stuff, you know. Manages to still be self-aware too, joking about how people say Noname can't rap. She can only talk quickly over or only do poetry. That's what people say about Telefone in a critical way. And that's why in Self she says, and y'all thought a bee couldn't rap.
Okay.
She's like, cool, I'm gonna flex on. Also, makes
no sense.
That critique completely ignores what rap is, like the history of rap music. Music.
No, my God. Okay. Yeah. Whatever.
People will look for any excuse to put down people of color, black women, it's whatever you want. They will look for excuses. I'm not gonna do that though. I have more good things to say about Room 25. Window is beautiful. Also a very memorable song. I always forget, coincidentally, I always forget about Don't Forget About Me. And then it hits and I'm like, whoa, this is a really nice
I really like that one, yeah. Yeah. I Pray My Soul is Still Eternal and My Mama Don't Forget About Me. Yeah.
I Pray My Granny Don't Forget About Me too. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
My body is fragile.
I also love the line, somebody hit D'Angelo. I think I need him on this one.
The other one I always forget. The middle of this album I always like kind of forget, and then Montego Bay comes up and I go, oh shoot, okay. Part of Me towards the end actually. That's the one that's like that's my attempt to make an impression of a song. It's that like little rise. A part of me. I don't think that's her. I think that's one of the I think that's that's Benjamin Earl Turner.
Felix.
Oh, Felix, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That high note, you don't hear that on No Name's albums usually. She doesn't go. This is like an interesting thing. She has like a lower register for like female rappers, but she has men come on to do the higher registers, which is just makes me happy. I think that's a really beautiful chorus. And then although this is my favorite, I think the last like couple tracks, I'm just like, oh, we're slowing down. It really like starts so strong. Hits a peak right around the middle, and then by the end you're kind of like, oh, I'm vibing, and then the album's over. Like I don't think about With You or No Name that often, although I think they're solid. They're not bad songs. Other notes about Room 25, what do you got?
There were some moments, I think on Window especially, where she's interpolating lyrics from Telefone, and then there was also the reemergence of saying Everything Is Everything. I think there's like a riff on Everything Is Everything on Window. But just those kinds of connections between songs were really cool. And I think there's more to be dissected and unpacked there. There's also, we didn't talk about Prayer Song, but she experiments with like perspective shifting in Prayer Song. She takes on the perspective in the second verse of a corrupt white policeman. Which is like a really chilling verse to listen to, and she has this like affect that she takes on that's pretty creepy and I think well done. It's not something she does a lot. In Sundial, which we'll talk about, there's a little more like sarcasm and a sort of tongue-in-cheek thing, but I don't know that she does a lot of full-on like character stuff except here. But I thought she did it well. I think those were the big other ones that I had. Yeah.
And she starts to, like I mentioned how this is like the beginning of No Name being very political in her rap music. And for 2018, this was like really political. But nowadays I read like, America the Great, Grateful Dead and Life, Apple Pie on Sunday Morning, Obesity and Heart Disease. Can you hear the freedom bells? And you're like, that's clever. But like, it's not the most clever thing I've ever heard. Like Obesity and Heart Disease. Yeah, they're going to come. It's like well delivered. And it's smart. And that's actually, I think that's Adam Ness on that part. But like, this starts to get into an issue of like, what does No Name choose to include with the other verses on her work? Like, what are other people rapping about? Because even though all of these songs that have features feel like they're cohesive, there still is a sense that like, okay, Adam Ness, it's your turn. Rap about whatever you want. This song is called Prayer Song. We're talking about America, and it's like for like cops and for black people here. what do you have to say? And he says, obesity and heart disease. Can you hear the freedom bells? And you're like, okay, that was a little sharp, I guess. But then, Room 25 comes out. The world is shooketh, as the people like to say. I go to that concert. I have a great time. Noname goes dark. She starts tweeting a lot. She becomes very online for a while, and then she leaves social media for a while. She's burnt out, and a problem that she starts talking a lot about right before launching the Noname Book Club is this classic issue that a lot of like self-conscious rappers have, which is the dissonance between their work and their fan base. And this is where if Noname was here, she would be turning her chair to stare at you and me doing this podcast about her work. Because she starts to get really frustrated that the majority of her fan base seems to be white people who like to feel good that they listen to like a black woman rapping. And she's like, you are not the people I ever made this music for. And, as a poet, you can be very much more specific about your audience. Like who gets this, who does this resonate with? But your music, you kind of are letting it free. You don't get to control necessarily who gets into your music. You try to, but it's hard. And so Room 25 was definitely the like album that my like white friends listened to and felt good about, including us here, It's partly as a result of that and partly just like stress and other life things. And then obviously the book club, Noname goes on hiatus. A couple years go by, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The book club's going fine. She's not really doing interviews anymore either, or like features. And you're like, oh, I guess Noname's done. She had the 2 album run and she doesn't want to. She literally would say like, I'm never putting out another album. And then
there are some singles here and there, right?
Oh yeah, I think there were a couple.
There were a handful, like maybe one a year or something like that.
Yeah, like Rainforest came out in like 2 years ago. I remember liking Rainforest.
Yeah, and there was like song 31, 32, and 33. I remember liking those. Yeah.
So she's still in music, right? But just no album, and you're like, I'm probably never getting another album. And then I don't think she did much promotion for it at all. But then Sundial just dropped on this past Friday and kind of existed, and you're like, whoa, no, that's a whole album with a thesis, like a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's like full length. We got all the features again. And so here we are talking about the latest Noname album, Sundial. It's so new that I've only been able to listen to it all the way through twice.
Same.
Magellan, what did you think about Sundial overall?
Yeah, I mean, first I want to acknowledge what you said there, which is that, at least speaking for myself, I am a white person. And it doesn't feel like this is for me. Like it feels like Noname would probably say that, or at least she's had frustrations about, like you said, the composition of her live shows or her fan base, and I totally understand where that's coming from. So I'm sort of offering my opinions here just like as someone who enjoys her music, and you can sort of take or leave the things that I have to say about it, given like the artist's intentions and desires with how people engage with the music. But anyway, I really like Sundial. I think it's great. I think it is a sort of continuation of what I was describing about Telefone, which is like Noname's ability to present and hold multiple truths that are in tension with one another, and like give those truths their due. And I don't mean that in a sort of like hollow both sides kind of way that we often have these sort of political conversations where we hold up the truth against like a popular lie. I mean, like Noname is presenting multiple valid critiques or interpretations of different situations or issues in this album. But this time, instead of the Telefone thing where it's this kind of like personal story about, my own identity as a creator, my family, where I grew up, instead it's like turning that poetic ability fully and completely towards societal issues, towards race, towards what it means to be an artist in a capitalist society. And so there are multiple moments here that I think really strikingly present complex realities that do not have a clear resolution, in a way that I found really compelling. So I like Sundial a lot. What did you think about it?
I also really liked it. I think the Noname, and I absolutely don't want to say any of this in a like gendered or sexist way, but I think that she has just become very like hypersensitive to the way people perceive her, like everyone does as an adult. I don't really think that's a gender thing. I think that she's become sensitive in a like thoughtful way. You know, now outwardly identifying as a socialist and acknowledging that she's like made a significant amount of money on her last couple albums. Sundial feels like this sort of like paying the piper of like, okay, we have to talk about a couple of things. We got to catch. It's like when you meet up with an old friend who you've seen on social media posting like, you know, fuck the police and all this stuff, and then you're like, hey, what do you actually think about this stuff? Like, what's your ideology? And they're like, well, here's what I think. That's what Sundial felt like to me, was a person who's like kind of finally figuring out what they believe about Black culture, about like capitalist, you know, Black capitalism, all that stuff, and what being a socialist actually means in 2023. And she manages to do it in a way that's critical of others, but is also definitely self-critical, which I think is a sharp way to avoid the criticism of like, okay, well, you clearly just hate everyone, you must just be angry. And she's like, no, I'm also a part of the problem. I'm just putting words to the problem, though, which I really appreciated. I think that was like, this is the strongest album lyrically for me, I think.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true. Yeah, I think what it sounds like she's grappling with on this album is when you become a public-facing leftist, suddenly you have to like answer for and fend off all of these different critiques of your leftism. And I think she handles some of those critiques well in this album. And then there's also kind of a recent controversy that hit today that I think she's not handling quite as well, and she's handling it in like a really confusing way. But just as an example, in the song, which one's the one where she's talking about the Jay-Z and the NFL, and she names all the different artists who played at the Super Bowl?
I can find it for you, but continue your point, and I'll tell you what song it was.
There's a song on the album where she's talking about. She basically is like, I don't fuck with the NFL or Jay-Z, because Jay-Z like and Rock Nation signed some big deal with the NFL. And then she calls out Beyonce and Kendrick and Rihanna, like all these different people who've done the Super Bowl halftime show in the aftermath of the Colin Kaepernick stuff, and just like the NFL's ongoing bad relationship with like racial justice. And Noname does a good job, like you were describing, of issuing that critique and then also saying like, hey, I said I wasn't gonna play for like predominantly white audiences anymore, but I went and did Coachella, and like I get that, and also
I collected that check.
I needed the money so like that's why I did that. And I think that that's a line, or that's like a, you know, a response to, oh, but you said you wouldn't, or like, oh, but aren't you a leftist? And it's like, yeah, but I've got to live in this, within the confines of this society, so I'm going to, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, there's no ethical like
creation
fame under capitalism, really. So like I'm gonna make mistakes in the process of doing things. So it's really interesting to hear her wrestle with that over the course of Sundial. I think my favorite song on the album. Yeah, go ahead.
It's Namesake is the one that's, you know, Rihanna, Beyonce, Kendrick. Yeah,
got it. My favorite song on the album, I think, is Hold Me Down. I really like the production on Hold Me Down, and it has a similar thing that it's navigating, where she's doing this tongue-in-cheek sarcastic thing. It's kind of a message to the Black community of like, look, we could either speak about issues of racial and economic justice as like something that's happening to us and say things like, oh, well, that wasn't us, that was colonialism. But then she has this line, the first Black president, and he was the one who bombed us. And then she has another line where she's like, we would be better off if we acknowledge that like we can hurt people too, that like we're part of the problem, that I'm problematic, that I do things that I should like do differently. And I think that theme is like a really tough needle to thread, And I think she does it extremely well on Sundial, barring the one recent upsetting thing that we can talk about when it's time to talk about it.
Yeah, my other thing about Hold Me Down is like that is a really strong song lyrically, and it's full of the choir, the Voices of Creation choir. And Noname has been incorporating like religious ideas and choir music, choir singing since Telefone, but she never really talks about God. And I kind of came to this realization in my notes that like something I like as an adult who kind of knows how to appreciate art and media is like like I said earlier, I don't know Noname, and if she never ever raps about her faith, there is no assumption I can make about what she feels about Christianity or about choir or about gospel or any of that stuff. I feel a kinship with somebody who appreciates that stuff as someone who also does, but it's just there, you know? And that's like the cool thing about her work is like, if you don't say it, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like deleted a lot of her social media too. She's not out here writing a book, to my knowledge. So it's only in the music that you get to know Noname, and that's, I mean, she goes by Noname. Same thing. Like you only know me as the music that I put out, and you don't know the person behind it. Even now at this third album, that is like as personal as it gets, and as specific with who it name drops. It's still like, oh, you're just doing what you want to do, and we can make whatever assumptions we want. But like you said, it's interesting that Hold Me Down comes right before the third track on this album, Balloons, which was teased before the album came out and received some flack right when she announced it because it's got a rap feature from Jay Electronica, who is a controversial figure in the rap industry because number one, he's a member of the Nation of Islam, which by some has been identified as a hate group. I have no thoughts on that. I'm not the person to speak on that. He also has made some like very questionable comments that are pretty anti-Semitic multiple times. And there is a lot of historical basis, like tension, you know, Nation of Islam people and anti-Semitism, you know, it's way too beyond the scope of this podcast. But Jay Electronica, complicated figure who also happens to like rap about stuff and like name drop like famous Jewish celebrities and like rich people in his verse in ways that some people have argued are definitely anti-Semitic. I think let me pull up the lyrics just to like talk about this as you know.
Yeah, so he talks about the Rothschilds. He talks about the Zelensky,
a joke like
Zelensky. He has this really weird line where he says, "Everywhere I step foot, I leave a trail of names of the sons of Yakub," which is the Hebrew name for Jacob. So it's just like, what the fuck? In a trail of flames is the next part of that line. These, I don't even know, these infidels killed my mom. It's an all-out war. Like, it's like, what are you talking about, man?
So okay,
yeah.
My thoughts right now are this. Noname has always been pretty smart about assuming. Well, she's in this album especially is like, hey, you guys are adults. I want you to understand that being a musician doesn't mean I'm rich. So like, I can still rap about capitalism and socialism, and that doesn't mean that I am a part of it. But I'm also not a rich person. I'm not in the elite that I'm like criticizing. Jay Electronica kind of can't do that as much, but you know what Noname could have done is just be like, hey, this verse is like pretty rough. I understand why some people are offended by it. She took the slur out of her name from her first album. She's done stuff like this where she backs off from certain parts of her identity, you know, and changes things.
Yeah.
But instead, it seems like from what I've read that she decided to dig her heels in a little bit and say, I don't, you know, decide. Do you have the quote up by any chance?
Well, so there were like two phases of digging her heels in, because the first was when this was teased and people were like upset that Jay Electronica was featured on the album at all. And then there was something where she was basically like, well, other rappers rap about like murder and sexual assaults that they've committed in real life, and you're upset about this. Like, it's not that big of a deal, was kind of her response to that initial backlash, which within that is a truth of like, there is this weird range of topics that are like okay in mainstream rap, but that doesn't justify other things.
Yeah.
So that was already a strange out of character defense, it felt like. And then her response when the actual verse came out, and this was from earlier today, I believe, is she wrote, "Here's the truth. No, I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't hate groups of people. I'm against white supremacy, which is a global system that privileges people who identify as white. I've been clear about this for years. I'm not going to apologize for a verse I didn't write. I'm not going to apologize for including it on my album. If you feel I'm wrong for including, that's fair. Don't listen. Unfollow and support all the other amazing rappers putting out dope music. Your disappointment truly means absolutely nothing to me, and I say that with love." Which is just like really confusing to me. Like, why is that the response? I don't get it, and it bums me out that she's like, I don't really care.
Yeah, there were better ways to respond to that. And like, this is where I get to back to like, Noname can be kind of hypersensitive of her fan base, not in a positive or negative way, but just a value neutral way. She like deletes her social media all the time, and it's like, you just put out a new album. There's an expectation that you're gonna like be around to talk about it and be part of the conversation. And I absolutely respect your right to step away from that. But like, when your last statement is like, I'm not really sorry. It's not my line. I put him on the album and I'm not going to delete it. It's like, can you like talk to me? It's like the equivalent of being like, hey, you just said something kind of offensive. And the other person's like, no. And they close the door on you and don't talk to you anymore. Like, this is a live conversation that you can have. And that's a part of album promotion. Is like, people think this. I didn't intend for this. I would like to talk about. And we've obviously had, like, we have our community, we talk about stuff that we say that people don't like, and we work on it, and we evolve because we're human beings. I'm not here to cancel Noname. I'm honestly, personally, not even here to cancel Jay Electronica. I think he is trying to be controversial and like really brash here, and definitely some of this stuff can 100% be read as anti-Semitic, 1000%. But it's just complicated, and that's like what Sundial is about. And it sucks that it's also turned into an actual controversy. It's like, politics are complicated, and what people say matters. We live in a society where all of your words are being criticized, really, like, to the T. But I think stuff like this could have been handled in a PR way so much better, and it's happened more than once with Noname, to the point where I'm like, it sounds like you might just not want to be in the public eye anymore. And I
which
that
is fine. Like, I don't have any expectation of her of like, you need to be public facing in any way. I think what she's named, like when she initially went on hiatus, is basically she's fully independent. Like, she produces and puts out these albums herself, and so it's like a financial undertaking to create and put music out there into the world. And like, part of the reason that there was such a big gap between Room 25 and Sundial is like, a major way that as an artist you subsidize that is through touring, and she became very disillusioned with her experience touring. So like, that makes complete sense to me. I think where this bothers me is this is an album where she goes through her entire thought process very transparently. Like, within the context of Sundial, it's weird that she would have this kind of reaction to this controversy. Because Sundial is an album that's like, I'm going to lay out all my cards on the table. Like, hey, I make mistakes. I do things that I don't feel good about, but I need to for the sake of like, having something to eat, or like living the way that I need to live, or whatever. And so it's like, either you were not aware of Jay Electronica's reputation. I wasn't aware until earlier today when I was looking this stuff up, but then you became aware. So then either you aren't bothered by the things he said, or you are bothered by them, but he's like a name that's bringing streams and recognition to the album, and it's a similar kind of like, we live in a society kind of decision. And it's like, then just say that. Like, Sundial is kind of about being able to say that, So I don't know. It's just, my takeaway is I'm confused. I'm not prescribing any particular action to her, but it's just like, that was a weird choice, and it really bums me out. Because the verse is fucked. Just
it
straight
is
up.
Yeah, most readings of it are not generous, especially with Jay Electronica's history, literally history with the Rothschild family. Like it just feels, you know, we talked like a couple minutes ago about like how personal can you be, right? That's like the sign of good rap music. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't think I actually wanted you to talk about that. I didn't need your statement on how you, quote, like cut the Rothschild family in half by like engaging in an affair with one of them. Like that's not a thing you should have mentioned. I don't need to know what Jay Electronica thinks about Vladimir Zelensky. You know, that's fine. I know.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, and this is what sucks, man. My last thing about this, and I would like to talk about the rest of the album, but like all of these things can be read either way. This is like the world we live in, is people are going to defend him because they're like, it's not explicit enough. He doesn't say like, I'm anti-Semitic. He just says Vladimir Zelensky's a joke. And it's like, well, what matters is that we don't, you know, disenfranchise people who think that that's anti-Semitic. Like, listen to people who say that. If they think that, totally valid. I get it. I understand why you think that, but not everybody thinks that, and that's where the fighting happens. And it's just fucking, it's weird and frustrating and complicated the way that Sundial is, right? The way that like any interesting art is.
Yeah.
But it's a bummer, and the way that it's definitely, we can agree, the way it's being handled is not awesome, and it's such a bummer too because like Aaron Allen Kane is on that song too. You just mentioned.
I know,
like,
I love Aaron Allen Kane. Yeah, I was excited to see her on this. Yeah, and she's great on it, and Noname's verses are great on that track, and I think she does a great job of describing the exact experience we were talking about, where she's like, all these casual white fans who are voyeuristic about my music, and like, what do they want to hear from me? Do they actually care, or are they just like consuming what I have to put out there? Like, am I just selling my trauma in exchange for money? Like those are really important themes of the album. And it's a bummer that this is, I don't know, kind of overshadowing that on the track. So yeah.
We bounce back with, I think my favorite song on the album, which is Boom Boom featuring Aoni.
It's a good one.
Or Iona.
It's a good one.
It's just so infectious. She has such a beautiful voice. She's got the range. She's doing all sorts of cool stuff. It's fun. It's all over. What is your favorite song on Sundial, by the way?
Hold Me Down. I said it earlier. Hold Me Down.
Oh, you did.
But
I'm sorry.
The one thing I didn't say about Hold Me Down that I like is, again, you know, if the thing I'm hammering is Noname's ability to kind of hold dual meanings. That dual meaning of Hold Me Down, which is like anchor me, but also like oppress me.
Right.
That was a pretty clever phrase to use in the chorus for that one. I also really like Oblivion at the end. I think Common's verse is great. Common famously is either like the corniest cool guy or the coolest corny guy, and I don't exactly know which one he is, but only Common could say could rhyme metaverse with ghetto hurts, and I'd be like,
and you're like, you got it. Did you come up with
metaphysics
that term?
ain't for the
That's
metaverse.
So
Thank you. I came up with it in the shower, I think. He says, my metaphysics ain't for the metaverse. It's red alerts. I touch where the ghetto hurts. Yeah, you do. Yes. That's what a good turn of phrase that only Common could say.
Exactly.
Else. Yeah.
He's been around so long that putting him on the last song of your album is such a fucking flex. Like, yeah, we got Colin Common on here and he's rapping about the metaverse. Like, what? That's so good. That's so cool. And he is corny. I had a phase with Common where I was like listening to is it Go? That album a lot. Or B rather, sorry.
B.
And From Water to Chocolate is my favorite, or Like Water from Chocolate is just like
I love Common
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I like is Cocaine 80s, which is a very, very underappreciated project that Common did with oh my god, James Fauntleroy and what's the girl's name? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I can't remember who it was. No ID, and then the lady's name. Oh, I just had it in front of my Janae Aiko. So Janae Aiko, No ID, Common, and James Fauntleroy did this like group in 2011. They just kind of like put out like a mixtape or two, and that's like my favorite Common stuff without a doubt. I still listen to songs from Cocaine 80s all the time, but that's more of an if you know you know Common fandom thing.
Oh, cool.
Neither here nor there. But yeah, I think that last single that last song on this album is fantastic. I do think that this one has a couple of like not memorable tracks, to be honest with you. Even on my second listen, I didn't get anything out of Afrofuturism. I think Afrofuturism as a concept is awesome, and I love reading about it and learning about it. But the song itself is 2 minutes long and has a 30-second like voice memo at the end of it, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, what is this about, actually? It does have the line, this verse could wrong 1/3 a human, referring to the 3/5 compromise. That's pretty much a bar, but beyond that one didn't hit me. And then Beauty Supply. Speaking of being self-critical, you know, I still take care of my appearance. And that ties back into the album art, a sort of like stylized, quote unquote, unattractive version of Noname. Like, well, this is like what I am. I'm being my honest, truest self to you. And then Beauty Supply is like, yeah, and I'm also like somebody who cares about my appearance a little bit, and I'm part of like a beauty standard for women. We need the standard refined, man. If I'm crying, cry. Take a trip with me to the Beauty Supply. It's kind of quite sharp, I would say. Any other thoughts on Sundial, Magellan?
There's this line from Silk Money's feature on Gospel where he says, "I'm not gonna lie, I'm not surprised to hear the Fugees is FBI."
I went on such a deep rabbit hole googling that.
Yeah, that's a line right there.
And like, when was this recorded? Because didn't that come out in April? That one of the members of Fugees was looking at FBI. That's wild.
Yeah.
Anything else?
But I don't remember the context, but there's a line on Oblivion where Noname says, "You sound like cat piss on popcorn."
Yeah.
I wrote that down. Yeah, that's
strong.
That's the last note I had. I really like Sundial. I think it's one that I'm going to return to and continue to unravel because there's a lot here. There's a lot of kind of unresolved themes and difficult themes and challenging questions to be examined. And I am glad that Noname came back to releasing albums to share it with the world. So yeah, you're allowed. I want people to be able to put out somewhat messy, but interesting and memorable art. I think that's awesome. Yeah. Even if I have my problems with it, I think Sundial is important. That line, by the way, the context is unfortunate because it's Noname complaining about the haters. Easily offended. I need a minute. Sorry. Opinionated Atari N-words play too much. I'm that bee. You sound like cat piss on popcorn. Eat the popcorn. This is Tubi. N-word. It's like, fuck you. Eat the popcorn. Eat the popcorn. This is Tubi. Tubi, like the fucking streaming service. Like, come on. Oh my god. So good. Yeah. It's fun to end on a song where you're just like, you know what? You're gonna be mad about this. I don't care. And while I am bummed out by her response to the Jay Electronica stuff, I respect her ability to put this out and the fact that she put this out. Yeah. So, Oblivion. Can you do me a favor? Can you rank these best or worst for yourself? In your personal preference. There's no way to objectively speak music. It's like not fair to include Telefone with the 3 because it's just like so. It matters a lot. It's just one of those albums that like I love it too much to answer that question. So I guess that's number 1. And then I end up wanting to sit with Sundial more than Room 25, I think. So that's like my ranking, but ranking doesn't really feel necessary here because each of the 3 is doing something that's distinct. Yeah, you're right. And is showing different sides of Noname. Well, what's your arrangement of them? You know, when I'm thinking about it, I have the same thought where I'm like, for me, it's Room 25, Telefone, Sundial. But I agree, like, you know, the way I read books right now to keep myself engaged is I alternate fiction and nonfiction because fiction's a little bit more fun. Nonfiction gets my brain going a little more. In that metaphor, Room 25 and Telefone are fiction and Sundial is nonfiction. In that it's enriching for me to think about this album and to re-listen to it and to talk about it. Right. But I'm not like excited to listen to it. I will think about the songs from Room 25 forever. They're just so they're buried in my head. And but yeah, I think Sundial's great. I think it's really cool that she came back and did a cool thing. Yeah, agreed. That was our attempt at music criticism, folks. I hope that was fun for you as much as it was for us. It's hard, especially when again. Especially when you're again a white guy and a white passing Arab guy trying to talk about art about how much we suck. Yeah, or at least about experiences that we aren't meant to access in this way. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening to this episode of Chats in a Pickle. Next time I can let you know it's my pick. and I wanted to do something that gets us thinking about something else that is a recent release. So we're going to go from the world of music to the world of video games. Baldur's Gate 3 recently came out. It was, whatever
Early
it is that
access.
games do now, where it's like early access forever, but now it's out for real. So that's out. And I was thinking,
Editor Alan here. I'm going to talk right over those kids and tell you everything Magellan's saying right now is false. No, honestly, though, we tried setting up our Baldur's Gate 2 saves to load those, as he mentions here. And the Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition doesn't keep your saves. It didn't have cloud saves when we played it. So our saves are super duper gone. And we're really bummed because they were cute and they had funny net titles. This was like the Buffy Chatz era, so they're kind of cringy. But no, Magellan's pickle for next week is Baldur's Gate 3. We are both playing the newly released, out of early access, Baldur's Gate 3. We're going to talk about Astarion and the Dungeons and Dragons and a little bit of KOTOR probably. It'll be great. It'll be so fun. And Editor Alan is gone now. Bye.
So if you have any opinions out there about the Baldur's Gate series that you want to send in and have us read, please do that. And we're going to chat just about the experience of dropping into Baldur's Gate 2 for a little bit.
No,
and
you're not.
If we happen to play Baldur's Gate 3, we might talk about that as well.
That's all we're talking about.
Our next
That's
episode of this season. Yes.
That was so rewarding.
Like my pickle.
Oh. That was very rewarding when I think it was Omens was like, we don't have to say pickle, guys. You can just, it's not, don't make fetch happen. And then everyone else was like, no, wait, I like pickle. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
It is corny. We know it's corny. That's why we do it. That's our brand.
Yeah,
I actually, by the way, Majal, I did just find out how to load our old saves. So
no,
we
you
should
didn't.
be good.
We're not good.
That after the
Perfect.
Can't wait to check in on Minsk, the guy with the hamster.
You will not do that.
And then, I've been downloading Baldur's Gate 3 for this entire podcast. That's why we've been having lag issues, is I'm downloading Baldur's Gate 3 over here. Wow, I just paused it. We have no lag anymore. Amazing. Anyways, let us know what you thought about our discussion of Noname. Do you have a favorite album of hers, a favorite song, a favorite verse? Why did I say verse like that? Verse? Anyways, you know where to get at us. Let's take to the plug zone. Let's just do a traditional ass Chatz a podcast plug zone. Yeah? Okay.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and start. I'm going to do it from memory. Here we go while I pull up the document. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, our email address is chatspod@gmail.com. We are on Twitter at Chatzpod. We are on Blue Sky, chatspod.bsky/.social. We're on YouTube Chatz Television Podcast, where you can watch the video version of last week's Hot Ones interview, which definitely enhances that experience. If you like the podcast, rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please. I always include a link to the Entertainment Fund if you want to support the people who need help during the WGA and SAG strikes. And those are the main things. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/ChatzPod. Yes. That is where you can hear bonus episodes, including our coverage of the discographies of Metric and Bare Naked Ladies from a couple years back over on Chatz Nights, which is one of the shows that we do with listener feedback, which also includes our Chatz Discord, which we reference often, and you would have access to if you're a patron or if you ask us nicely. That can all be accessed at patreon.com/ChatzPod. And the last thing there is that if you donate at $5 a month or more, you get thanked at the end of every main feed ep. And as of today, our $5 patrons include Stefan, Six, Noel, Nick and Pat of the Brothers at Infinite War, Magellan's mom, Michael, May Louise, Marcus, Lee, Kat, Justin, Jen, Emrys, and Arthur. Thank you all for being supporters of the show. All things Chatz can be found at chatspod.com. Our main feed art was done by Camilla. Her social media handles are all at Camillastrator. And before we take it home, I know that we're still in a pickle, but we gotta recommend some Chatsums. These are little tiny quick just recommendations of things that we've been enjoying, things that we want to talk about, and things that we want to give our shout outs to. So Magellan, I want you to go first, please. What is or are your Chatsums for this week?
My Chatsum for this week, I alluded to it earlier, but you should really check out the music of Erin Allen Kane. She's an amazing singer. She has an album called A Tree Planted by Water. It's 7 songs, 18 minutes long. So, it's a quick listen, but it's a wonderful one. My favorite song on there is called Feel the Need. It's quite a jam. And then I'd also recommend checking out Aviary Act 1 and Aviary Act 2, which are EPs. My favorite songs off of those are Slipping off of Aviary Act 1 and Now and Then off of Aviary Act 2. So those are my Erin Allen Kane recommendations. So she also recently put out a single with Killer Mike called Motherless. That's pretty good.
Whoa.
So if you like Killer Mike, and I think they even put out an EP together, it looks like. So yeah, check out Erin Allen Kane. What about you? What's your Chatsum?
I just had a really good Chatsum and I completely forgot it. The other Chatsum I was going to recommend is just Brian Jordan Alvarez is a comedian who's been posting on YouTube for like over 10 years. And he's been recently blowing up on social media for this character he does of the student, which is basically him doing a funny voice. And he puts on a really bad Snapchat afro filter. And you can just look up Brian Jordan Alvarez, the student, and you'll find these. The compilation on YouTube is 21 minutes long. So this is like a thing you can dive into if you want to understand my humor. It's that pretty much to a T. I have my other Chatsum is game related. We're now
before you do that, we just yesterday put out a Chats Nights episode where the intro music fades in with us laughing at something.
It's that,
but it's not explicit what we were watching. It's that video, so you can check it out.
Perfect. If
you're like, what were they laughing at the beginning of Chats Nights?
We're watching Brian Jordan Alvarez doing the student character.
Yeah.
So we're a couple weeks out from this, but Evo Evolution 2023 just ended recently. This is a annual fighting game tournament. It's like the biggest fighting game tournament out there. And I watched a bunch of it with my friends last weekend, and it's just the Street Fighter 6 tournament across the board was thrilling. It had some of the best fighting game matches I've ever seen. Even if you don't care about fighting games, and people say this every year, Evo's been going on for over a decade. There's like narrative arcs that just naturally form in the way that they don't even form during like regular sports seasons sometimes. You're a basketball guy. You know how like sometimes over the course of a season, a team can have a sort of narrative about like their underdog story or whatever. That happens like every year at Evo. And this latest year, with the two people who ended up being in the finals, like had these matches that were like way earlier, like 3 days earlier in pools, which is like the, setting the bracket games, and that were like so amazing. And you're like, I hope they go to the finals, and they make it all the way to the finals. And the ending is incredible. And you're like, this is not scripted. Are you sure? I was popping off, and it's all on YouTube. Just look up EVO 2023 Street Fighter 6. It's just fighting games at their finest. I wish 6 was here to pop off with me, because they've been a really big help getting me into like fighting games as a spectator sport in addition to a game series type that I play. But yeah, definitely check those out if you want to just like get excited about something. They're great. And that's all we have, folks. So thank you to Magellan for being the friend that helps me open the pickle jar when I'm really hungry. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to Chats in a Pickle. Peace. 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 In a pickle. Peace.